Welcome to the Dibley diaries for this week. This week we're going to be thinking about friends, and I wanted to start with a real challenge, thinking about friends organisations which are part of a church. Well, they're not part of church communities which are associated with churches. So these are often set up as separate charities called the Friends of so-and-so parish church, and they have in their aims and objectives to just support the maintenance and upkeep of the church building, and often these don't have anything to do with their mission of the church community. They can work really well. They can gather interested people, some of whom don't want anything to do with the mission of the church community, but do want to raise money to preserve the historic fabric of the church building. And that can be good. We've had, where I've worked, we've had some fantastic friends organisations. They hold regular events which attract the whole village, and they just do fundraising, and they put money aside, so that if there is a crisis with the church building, then money is set aside waiting for that time. However, there can be issues because the people in these organisations are very focused on the building. They are not part of the mission. They can actually, if the church community wants to do something which is specifically missional and alter the church building, that can lead to conflict. And the other really not very good reason about setting up one of these organisations is to keep the money from the diocese. So the diocese should act in many ways as a kind of cooperative for all the churches which effectively have separate trustee bodies, the PCCs, but the PCCs make a contribution to the diocese, and the diocese spend that on paying for the vicars, so pay for clergy, pay for clergy housing and for that to be looked after, pay for support staff for the lay and ordained people, and they pay for clergy pensions. That is what the majority of money which goes to the diocese is spent on, to provide this kind of cooperative support structure for the churches across the whole area of the diocese. But because the money in a friend's account sits separately, they're a separate charity, then people do that sometimes to feel that then the diocese can't get their hands on it. So friends organisations can be amazing. They can be really great at drawing in the community, people who aren't interested in the mission of the church, to actually support the fabric of the church building. Supporting the fabric can be such a burden for often a small worshipping community. But they can on occasion be objectors to things which might be useful to change in a church building for the worshipping community to do something which is missional or something which they feel God's calling them to do. So that can be a tension. So the most important thing to do if you have a friends group associated with your church is that you need to be friendly to them, and they need to be friendly to you, to your worshipping community. You just need to be friends. This week's thought for the week is based on Luke chapter 8 verses 22 to 25, which is the Luke telling of Jesus stilling the storm. And I've been thinking about Jesus and his friends this week as they're interacting in this boat, and I've been thinking about what best friend I might want in a crisis. And I've got some really good friends. When you ask someone from the pulpit, who is your best friend? There's an expectation that you're going to say Jesus. But then you say, well, who is your best friend, and who is the person, your friend, that you would want if you were in a crisis? These may not necessarily at all be the same things. They may not be the same people. But they're on the boat, and Jesus is asleep. In some of the other narratives of this story, Jesus is asleep with his head on a cushion. Jesus is just exhausted at this point. And then this storm comes up, and that Jesus' friends really think that they're going to die. The boat is sinking. The boat is sinking at this point, and they wake Jesus up. We don't really know why they wake Jesus up. I still am unclear what they thought Jesus was going to do. There's no walking on the water narrative in Luke, so there's no expectation that maybe Jesus is going to walk them away from the boat. Maybe they were just going to give him a bucket and get him to bail, so there's like fighting the battle of water in the boat versus water out the boat. Maybe they thought he just needed to be aware that they were going to sink, so that didn't happen when he was asleep. So they wake him up. They're waking him up in this impossible, life-threatening situation and tell him that the boat is going to sink. And Jesus just looks at the storm and says, "Be still," and the storm is calm. And I can almost guarantee that's not what they were expecting to happen, because it reports in the narrative that they are amazed by this. They're amazed that Jesus manages to still the storm. This week, earlier in the week, I went to a prayer vigil for Christians in Gaza. That was our focus, but obviously our focus on peace in all of that area. And I was struck while I was there about how impossible it seemed to pray. How impossible it seemed to pray. And I was thinking about that this week, and I was started thinking this a little bit whilst I was there, that I've prayed for impossible things before in my life, consistently. I was talking to one of my other friends who's my age about it in the week, and he said, yeah, that's what we used to pray. We used to pray for Northern Ireland, we used to pray for South Africa, and we used to pray for Christians in the Soviet Union. And God brought about change there in a way which we weren't expecting. We didn't think that was how God could do it. Sometimes it was very surprising. Now, I'm not saying those places are perfect now by any means, because any place where you gather a whole heap of humans is not going to be perfect. But God did change things there, the impossible things that we prayed for and we prayed for and we prayed for. So this week I've been thinking about this inspiration of Jesus' friends waking Jesus up because they feel that the situation is impossible and that their lives are at risk. The lives of all Jesus' friends in the boat are at risk. They wake Jesus up and he sorts it out. He sorts out the impossible thing in a way which nobody expected. And I think this week that's encouraged me to be faithful to pray, to carry on praying and asking Jesus to intervene as my friend in the places where things seem impossible. The Dibley moment of the week this week is something which happened to me on the morning of my wedding all those years ago. We were decorating the room where we were having our meal with helium balloons tied onto chairs with invisible thread. They looked amazing, but when the waiting staff arrived to set the tables, they were furious. They said, "This is impossible. We can't do this. We cannot possibly lay the tables or serve a meal with the balloons like this." And my friend, who is a very wise person, said, no, all we need to do, we'll tuck the balloons under the chairs while the waiting staff, whilst you can set the table, and then once people have sat down, we'll ask them to break the string and the balloons will float in the air, and that will be fine. And so my friend had found a solution to what the waiting staff believed was an impossible problem. And that's it for the Dibley Diaries this week. I pray that you and your village, however large or small, have a really blessed week where Jesus is with you and can solve your impossible problems.